All right, welcome to HOD Pod, an unofficial podcast and YouTube series on HBO's House of the Dragon. As always, we have my hand of the king, Steven.
Hey, what's up, Benjamin?
And then I was thinking for myself, what do you think of The Dark Knight of Westeros?
The Dark Knight of Westeros? I mean, that could be fun.
I'm definitely not a hand of the king. I'm not qualified like you. You got to be super smart for that, know your stuff. I can swing a sword probably.
Me too.
You know, I have my dark moments. Dark Knight. We're done. So yeah, guys, welcome back. This is our official episode 1 because House of the Dragon has dropped. We did our intro episode last week. I would subscribe if you haven't for that. But yeah, definitely subscribe here at the channel. Again, for now, we're on youtube.com/above and Batman Beyond. And then, of course, audio, as always, Spotify for now, but it's going to become an iTunes soon. So subscribe on your typical audio feeds for, so you don't miss an episode. So today we're going to do, again, review and recap episode 1, House of the Dragon dropped last night. We're recording just a day after, less than 24. That's the return time we get for these citizens of Westeros. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Less than 24 hours. So, and then audio will be dropping on Tuesdays. So every Monday at 11 a.m. EST, we'll be doing this here on YouTube, and then audio will be dropping Tuesday. So again, we're going to be reviewing episode 1. We're going to do a non-spoiler initial thoughts, which, as we discussed just before recording, it's going to be pretty short. It's a prequel series. By nature, the show is spoiled, let's say. So, we're not going to go nuts with spoiler or non-spoiler, but we will have a kind of non-spoiler wall for our initial thoughts, and then we're going to kind of jump right into it. Sound good?
Yeah, I know for non-spoilers, there's definitely a house full of dragons. Definitely.
I mean, debatable from what I saw, but...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Shots fired.
But did we see the bravest people of all of Westeros? I mean, those guys were rearing the dragon with a stick, a wooden stick. Like,
yeah,
hey, you get back in your pen. That dragon looked like he was going to what?
Yo, the dragon tamers, I know. And in Game of Thrones fashion, I was just like, just let that guy get snatched, dude. I thought that would have been so Thrones, but I'm like,
the fact that was an older guy. So he's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, but there was a younger scared guy?
Yeah, well, he has been doing it for a long time. He's like, I don't think this toothpick is going to matter. And those guys, trust me, they hate toothpicks.
All right, well, yeah. Anyway, but let's do it. I'm glad we covered at least a dragon so far. It's about dragons. All right, so initial thoughts. Go for it, Steven.
I like the homages to the music. That took me right back to Westeros, which
Okay.
I quite enjoyed. Yeah, it was interesting in the very beginning, because very beginning we're not with Viserys, which is what the show's primary focus is early on. We were with Jaehaerys, which actually created most of the laws that Westeros is based around. And you could see King's Landing being built up, and
that was cool.
The Red Keep is still being constructed, so that was really neat. And then you see it progressing further. The throne looked awesome, definitely awesome.
It those added, I should say later subtracted swords that lined it. That was cool.
Oh yeah. Finally got to see some dragons that looked distinct. That was nice. All the costuming looked really good too.
Really good.
It did feel like we were going right back to Westeros, so it was nice to see. And also, the King's Landing didn't look so grungy. It still looked kind of like booming a little bit. Like the tournament grounds were all fancy. I remember Game of Thrones season 1, man, the tournament grounds are shit basically. It's a little crappy house and they're fighting in the mud. Here,
in the mud, and there were you could see the bark of birch trees, because I just watched season 1.
Yeah.
Like that line that they put in the middle for the jousting, it's a birch tree with ropes. I'm like, damn, this is some low-tech Westeros.
Yeah, well, here we got an official jousting tournament stadium. Everything's all set up and nice. So that was pretty interesting. I saw statues of dragons all over the place. So I was like, okay, nice.
That was dope.
Definitely better than later on, because Cersei didn't blow up all of King's Landing, so it's not cratered everywhere.
Daenerys or Cersei?
Cersei the first time,
with the green...
using the dragon fire to blow up everything. It's like, hey, look, the sept, it's still there. And then, the city. Hey, look, the city's still there and bustling. Yet, remember, it opens with, this is 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen. So you get to see the city before it's ashes.
Yeah, so I guess let's get into that real quick. So for those watching, I mean, they say it in the opening, but the reason that we're seeing all the fancy stuff compared to, you know, a broken down Westeros is because this is the height of the golden age of Westeros. I was watching a lot of the special features, behind the scenes stuff on HBO Max. Definitely check that stuff out. There's like 100 featurettes on there that are pretty good. And one of them was talking about this is the golden age of Westeros. There's like 60 years of peace, no war, because of the dragons. It's like if you mess with the Targaryens, you get the dragon. Guess who's going to be in charge? So there's peace, if you will. You know, it's by threat, by force, by fear. Peace nonetheless. So nothing's getting destroyed and ruins. And you know, Harrenhal's a great example of. Talk about Harrenhal, for example. That was an interesting thing.
Yeah, they're one of the first ones to be like, nah, we'll hide in the castle. What's the dragon going to do? It's made out of stone. Well, you breathe in those fire, you get molten stone, and you're still inside an oven. So the Harrenhal people, they baked well.
In Italian, you say, like, pasta al forno, baked. It's just like Harrenhal al forno. I kept thinking that. So bad. And then we see that melted-ass castle in Season 2 with those amazing scenes that we were talking about off mic between Tywin Lannister and Arya Stark. I mean, that's some of the best of Thrones. Is the youngest characters. You were saying that was a really good point.
With a veteran actor, Charles Dance.
I mean, Charles Dance is like classic British, you know, royalty, pun intended, of acting, and those two against each other in the ruins of Harrenhal, where this dragon just melted that bitch.
Oh yeah.
That was a fascinating. I was listening. There's an official. Because we're unofficial. So far, as Stephen was saying, we maybe could pitch this to HBO. The 30 Game of Thrones podcasts out there, we're going to be the one who also gets official. But there's a House of the Dragon official podcast right now. It's pretty good. And it was talking about the story. They actually go through my favorite episodes so far. There's 3 on there, even including there's a whole George R.R. Martin interview. But one of them is a map of Westeros. So they do like this audio walk through the map of Westeros, which was pretty cool. Because I kind of, for the first time, beside the obvious amazing opening map of the original series, I opened up a map and was like really looking at it and took some time about a week ago. And then so to hear kind of an audio version of that, an expert go through it, and they talked about that story of Harrenhal, and specifically, obviously, for House of the Dragon, it was the map of Westeros through Targaryen conquest and kind of the history of the conquest. And there's also a featurette with Martin talking about, you know, the Targaryens are from originally Valyria, then Dragonstone, and then King's Landing.
Yep.
So it kind of talked about the history of all that, which is really cool.
Which this one kind of gives more meaning to that too, by the way, because was it Viserys is talking to Rhaenyra about why Aegon decided to conquer Westeros, and it wasn't just because he wanted to. So that was pretty interesting. But we'll get that in spoiler stuff.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's. I'll give you some of my initial spoiler-free thoughts. You know, I have hope, and I know that it doesn't sound the most promising thing to say here. We were talking off mic how, and I've been avoiding reviews. Anytime I do a review, I try to avoid other reviews to let them seep in. For example, what I'm about to say, which is, I thought a review that Stephen was telling me that someone said is it's hard to recommend right now because it's so early on. I mean, it's literally the pilot. Pilots are not easy. You know, pilots are first episode of TV, if you're not familiar. First episode of anything, not easy to do. Endings are not easy, as we learned. Quite seriously, endings are not easy, nor are, openings, pilots. I don't know. So I guess before getting into specifics again, because there were initial thoughts, I am someone who walked out of the Many Saints of Newark. I came in to tell Stephen that story like October, the day after 24 Hours.
Yeah.
Remember my rant?
Oh, yeah. We have lots of movie rants.
Yeah. So I came in literally a day after last October when Many Saints of Newark came out. This, in case you're not familiar, is a prequel movie to Sopranos. And I was such a Sopranos fan that to me it was like 10 minutes into the movie, I paid my money and I was out, because I was just like, at a certain point you do have to honor, quality-wise, the original. And I'm not saying, I know it's going to be different. Yes, I get it. It's a prequel. It's a young Tony Soprano. Back to House of the Dragon, I get it. It's 200 years before. Even the source material, I think we talked about this in the intro episode, it's written almost as the Bible. This is like the Bible,
It's a history book, like a third-person history book, yeah.
Almost in a way of either the Bible, or for Greek history, you have the Iliad and the Odyssey. That's kind of the Bible of ancient Greece. So I understand that you're not going to have those same genius dialogue moments that we get in Game of Thrones. I mean, one of the things about George R. R. Martin, if you're not familiar with him writing specifically, and why the show is so good and why it's such perfect material for adaptation, is his dialogue. The dialogue of Game of Thrones, right? I mean, you've read A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. Well, up to what they have.
Up to because it's not done yet. The dialogue's amazing. I didn't expect to get that amazing dialogue. I guess that's important to say here too. I had no expectations of this show. I expected the worst. I didn't get the worst. I didn't walk out of this show. So I guess I should have probably said that first. That's why I went into the whole Many Saints in Newark thing. I walked out of that theater. I didn't walk out of this theater. It was my iPad, but I didn't walk out. I was like, this is good. My biggest problem here is editing. It's probably my biggest issue. And it's ultimately because, it caused me to care a little less than I would have if they just rearranged even what I saw in that episode. Not even necessarily like adding or taking away. I mean, definitely there could have been some things that were cut. But especially because it was an hour and 16, it was a little longer. So I was like, there's stuff in there that didn't need to be there. Plus, even things that I got within the episode, if you had just started with, and I'm not going to give examples because, again, I want to do this non-spoiler. What we got, if you had just rearranged that, especially with the opening of the actual episode, openings aren't easy, beginnings aren't easy. It opened exactly as like, I'm reading a history book. Like, you didn't need to do that voiceover intro. I just felt like voiceover, ask any filmmaker, even TV, whatever, it's kind of the easiest / weakest way to open things. It's got to be really good if you do it. And I thought this was all right. I gave a lot of room because, again, I know the source material is third person. I get that. But it's Game of Thrones, and here's another thing that we should say in non-spoilers, and throughout the rest of this whole podcast, is that comparisons to Thrones are inevitable.
Yeah.
And this is why I walked out of Many Saints, is because, I know it's different, but at a certain point, you have to meet at least the quality of the original. So I think it's fair game to make comparisons to Thrones. It just is. Now, having said that, it's like, I don't expect it, again, to be, I forgot where exactly I was going with that, but, I don't expect Thrones level stuff here, but I will say that it's like, again, I forgot where it was going. Oh, it's having me care for the characters. I felt like by the end of episode 1 of Thrones, I was in love with those characters. I mean, I care for these characters, I do. And again, if there was just a little rearranging, I would have cared a lot more. I'm waiting to care a little more. Full of great moments, as I said. I guess we'll get to specifics with that. Production quality, production quality, you were saying, the costuming. I'm really impressed. I watched a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. They built a lot more sets than I would have expected.
Yeah.
A lot of times with movies now, it's like they build a very small portion of the set, and then the rest of it's obviously CG. A lot of this shit, I mean, even there were interviews with the actors that they were like, you can CG this. Like, you didn't have to build all this. Even the actors were very impressed and surprised that they're walking onto actual sets. I mean, that's very rare in any kind of genre thing anymore to have actual sets.
I thought the armors all looked really good, especially in the jousting tournament. They did a lot of jousting than just like hard cuts where it's like, okay, and they run and they tap and that's it. We saw some brutal hits in the jousting. People getting decimated off the horses.
I agree.
They didn't really turn away other than where it made sense story-wise. CG on the dragons, like I said, looked pretty good. The panoramic views of the city looked pretty good. Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say before, for my initial thoughts, it's like, House of the what? We saw a dragon 5 minutes in. That was cool. Rhaenyra is her name, the princess.
Yeah, Princess Rhaenyra's out riding on Syrax.
Yeah, she's out, above King's Landing. They play the Dragonstone theme, which I was saying last week that it's the Khaleesi theme that makes me cry. It's actually, I went back to Spotify. It's called Dragonstone. That's the name of the song. And anytime there's an emotional scene with the dragons, like when she's approaching Dragonstone and Thrones for the first time, and the dragons are flying up, and she's coming to her home, reclaiming Westeros for the first time, all that beautiful shit. That always makes me cry. And there was a mix of Dragonstone in that scene with Rhaenyra flying into King's Landing. I'm not going to say I teared up, but I was like, whoa, this is gorgeous. Again, CG, the cityscape of King's Landing, pretty impressive. I love seeing the dome, which, as we know, is going to be the Dragon Pit. I live just outside of Florence. The Duomo, the domes of any medieval or Renaissance thing to me is always a special place in my heart. See, that was incredible. And I know this all sounds like a big butt, because it is. It's like, we got that dragon 5 minutes in.
The reaction of the people, too, I took note of. When she flies over the city, that was a straight, almost mirrored image of when Daenerys flies over the city, too, on Drogon. But the people don't react negatively, because they're like, it's dragons. Ooh, that's awesome. Unlike in season 8, we're like, oh, just like us. No!
I did notice that. I was like, yeah. I noticed that. I was like, oh, people are just weirdly used to these beasts flying. But the thing is this. It's like, the next time I saw a dragon in a show called House of the Dragon was 40-something minutes in, and it lights a funeral pyre. That was actually cool. I like the involvement of that. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. We did see one at the end as well. I just think 3, not even scenes really. I mean, it's more like shots of dragons. Is not enough in a show called House of the Dragon. Like, we talked about Harrenhal and it got melted by a conqueror. It's like, if you want to go through the history, and as the show opens, this is non-spoiler, the show literally opens with a voiceover of like, here's the brief history, previously on the history of Westeros.
They're also like, they have 10 dragons currently.
Yeah,
10 whole dragons.
And it's like, okay, let's open with Harrenhal being melted, not this great council of...
Well, that's way back in time.
But still, show that shit. I don't know, open with a dragon melting something.
They did. They melted a baby and a mom. That's what they get.
Right, but we didn't really open with that, though. It's like, I don't know. There's many things you could have opened with, including dragons. And I just feel like in a show called House of the Dragon, I want more dragons.
Yeah.
So that's it for my initial non-spoiler thoughts.
I wasn't too upset with that. I wanted to get into a lot of the characters.
Okay.
Of course, I'm super hyped on the dragons, but I did want to start seeing a bunch of the characters and get right away into that setup, because it's gonna take a little bit. We know that there's a time skip before we really get into the action that's gonna cause the Targaryens to be in the trouble they are, which they hint at in the beginning. They're like, the most dangerous aspect to the Targaryens is Targaryens. And that's been a theme like within Fire and Blood for a little while.
Watch the table. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Shakes the camera.
We don't want to shake the table here. All right. You want to hit spoilers?
Yeah, we're ready.
Are you good? Okay. So 3, 2, 1, over the spoiler wall here. Again, I was not a fan of the opening voiceover. I think that the opening in general, if you had just opened with, there's like 3 things you could open with. You could have opened with all the drama between Daemon and his brother. I thought that would have been like, and because here's the moment, I guess what I'll do is I'll hit the moments that to me were kind of the most impactful.
Well, there is a reason why they had to start with Jaehaerys. That's one of George R.R. Martin's conditions, remember? Because Game of Thrones forgot about him and how important he is to the legacy of the kings. So he's like, hey, we need that.
Cover that, though, and not open with it.
It's true, but it is important. That's the first time the heir legacy got brought up, because it's never been a problem. They're like, the firstborn son, you're the heir. Jaehaerys was the start of, both my sons are dead. Mm-hmm. What do I do? We'll have everyone in the 7 kingdoms vote. And so they voted for Viserys, which is entirely different. That's kind of like how they ended up in season 8, where they ended up voting for Bran. Like, what happens when he dies? Like, then we'll do another vote. So they voted for Viserys instead of Rhaenys, and that's where we're at now. So there's the tension between Rhaenys, which we barely got to see, but they make some sly comments, the Baratheon knight did, and with Viserys' family. So he's set up to have this problem with the lineage line as well, and how is he going to do things differently versus what happened previously?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I don't want to, I know it sounds like I'm dismissing everything you just said. It's more just, even that could have been through exposition. It's just like, start with, I think, the drama between the brother and his older brother. And it's just like, you're a guy walking into a throne room and saying to the king's face, "You're weak." And just, I thought that whole dialogue, the way that played out was really good. The way the tension built between the two of them. And finally, it was just like, "You're weak." They go back and forth. He banishes him. I know we need some setup. I just feel like that's one example. Another example is you could have had, I don't know. I don't want to keep going through how the show could have been better. I'm not the one writing and producing the show. It's just, I would have wanted to start with a little more, like we talked about the cold opening, literally, of season 1 of Game of Thrones. I mean, again, really hard to compare to the greatest, most popular television show of all time. I don't have those expectations. It opens with the threat of the White Walkers, people getting decapitated, a circle of body parts, dismemberment. You know, there was even dismemberment in the show. Go through, I think literally the opening of it is the like those guys slamming their chests, which they cut in with the trailer, that opening 4 hits in the trailer.
Yep.
And then the drama of I feel like you could have done that and then just rearranged it with your little history lesson that was so good, and I felt like Matt Smith does such a good job. At first I was a little like, this guy's going to be, it'll be a little too melodramatic, but there's a lot of subtlety to his performance that I was really impressed with.
Yeah, I definitely liked him.
All right, so what else with... Oh, that was the other thing, yeah. I do have it in my notes here. Another thing you could have opened with, the forced C-section of the Queen. That was so Game of Thrones to me. It was, because it very much had the whole, women are never safe in Westeros. It is just... I don't want to get kicked off YouTube here, but the R word against women, a lot of sexual assault, I'm sure they'll let us say that. I mean, that's arguably what that is. It's holding a woman down, forcing a baby out of her that she doesn't even know what's going on.
Oh, yeah, she was terrified. It's like, what's happening? It's like, we're getting the baby out. It'll be okay.
And you think, because you heard the Maester say before that, this is how it's going to have to go down. And so as he's approaching her at the bed, you think maybe he's told her what's about to happen and she's cool with it because she might love the baby or whatever. But she's like, whoa, what? And again, I had some beef with I don't care enough about the characters. This is an example where the two of them were like, whatever, until that bathtub scene where it's that was so good between husband and wife. And it's just this woman, medieval times, going look, I'm sorry if I failed you. So sad. I've tried to produce, 5 stillborns she had, whatever it was. I mean, since Rhaenyra, she just keeps trying to produce a male heir. That's the whole crux of the show. Can't do it, feels guilty about it. And they have that scene before that. I thought that was so good. And then to follow that with the forced C-section was money. I mean, the two of them have all this connection, specifically over this male heir thing. And she's like, this is the last one. If this doesn't work, I'm sorry, we're done. You could tell they're in the probably late 40s. You can't kind of keep expecting a woman to produce after that. And it's really, I just thought that all of that shit, if you would imagine opening the show with that, the bathtub scene, you could have gotten the exposition about the whole male heir thing, history of Westeros, or specifically with the Targaryens, how women can't take the throne. So he's got to produce a male heir, and then jump into that 4 C-section. I thought also symbolically that would have been cool, because it's this is the birth of welcome to the show, welcome to how sick this world is. And then a dragon burns the baby, the dead baby, and this dead wife that you fell in love with for the past 10 minutes. Again, I know that constantly rewriting the show is not probably how we should be reviewing this, but it's more to highlight just incredible moments in the show.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, that's not wrong. I like the current pacing, though, they did. They didn't spend enough time, though, with the baby, so it's hard to see that he was that devastated. It was more like, boy, I know it's going to be a boy, and everyone's like, I don't know if it's going to be a boy. And, then you see the disappointment. What I thought was the better way that they did it was actually with the princess. Princess Rhaenyra, she comes off kind of like an Arya, where she wants to do her own thing, and it makes sense. The dad, Viserys, only wanted to have a male heir, and she's basically unnoticed, so she probably would have wanted to do the things to try to catch his attention. In Arya's case, she didn't really have to do that because there were plenty of boys born before her, and Ned was fine with all of his children, so it didn't really matter.
That's true. There's zero dynasty pressure on Arya Stark for the Stark. It's like she knows there's nothing coming to her.
Other than that, she didn't want to be married off to some lord. She was like, I want to do my own thing. Let me shoot arrows at somebody. A weird thing. Did you know that dragons apparently smell so bad they could smell you across the room? I did not think that, because I
actually thought that was a great detail. How did you feel about it?
I was a little taken aback because Prince Rhaenyra's, they ride in nice leather saddles. Right. They're up in the wind. So, are you really getting dragon scent on you when you're flying through 60 miles an hour in the air? Woo! We're going never-ending story here. Yeah! And they land.
A flying dog would smell. But.
Yeah, and the mom's in just relaxing. She's already swaying. It's you smell that? You were out with the dragons again. It's what? I'm in clean clothes, going 60 miles an hour in the air, and I was in a leather strapped-in seat. And the dad's like, my cupbearer's late. Dragons I smell?
Right, so that had to be at least a half hour.
I was like, damn, that's a stinky-ass dragon. Good God, I know what its name should be instead of Cyrax. Welcome, shit beast.
Well, you said there is one poopy dragon, right?
It's a wild dragon in the book. It's just dark brown. It literally looks like poo. That's how it's described. Straight is dirty.
Poogon?
No, it's sheep stealer because they name it based off what it does. It's
terrible.
I steal and eat sheeps. Sheep stealer it is then.
That's almost as good a name as Shaggy Dog.
Shaggy Dog. You mean the direwolf?
I forgot that worthless character even had a direwolf. Yes, the direwolf.
Oh, but we did get to see the actual Rickon Stark. He's like, I, Rickon Stark, feel my fealty to Princess Rhaenyra. It's like, please don't name any heirs after me that are going to be whiny and stupid. Shit.
Please, gods, make him useful. 7 hells, don't do what I think you're going to do.
Oops.
Anyway, yeah, the dragon smell, that was interesting. I mean, but Steven, pregnant women have a better sense of smell.
Yeah, well, the dad said it too. Yeah.
So old kings also have a sense of smell.
I'm surprised they didn't say that to Daemon, smells like you've been to the orgy all day whorehouse today. Also, oh man, Littlefinger, you gotta have some appreciation. He ran a nice, clean, well done whorehouse. When you see what they look like now, it's just
pleasure house. Okay, it's a pleasure house.
Yeah, for all your distinct pleasures. Well, what Daemon walked into was straight orgies on the floor, and they're serving beer.
Yeah, that was kind of the low rent strip club version.
And he's basically the prince, the heir, because he is the heir at that time when he's going in there. He's like, "Oh, Prince, welcome to your fancy establishment at Orgies R Us."
Yeah, I guess let's get into that. I mean, one of the formulas of Thrones, sex and violence, right? It's there. With this, it was I thought it was interesting to have the prince, this badass, essentially the Jaime Lannister of the story. Almost, awkward to kind of say on here, depending on who's watching, listening. It's wasn't really able to get it up. Was just kind of awkward. And at first, when you see him having sex, I'm like, what is he doing? And then you realize he's unable to perform. I thought that was pretty interesting for a guy who's so hardcore. but you could tell it's probably, my interpretation of that was it was just all he has on his mind is ambition for the throne. And it's like, if that's where the blood is, it's not going elsewhere. Did you get that from that?
There is. There's a lot of worry on him, but it's not so much ambition. Okay, so the other characters, Otto Hightower. The Hightowers dislike Daemon Targaryen, which they do. They do establish that. They say that they made him master of coin before. It's like, no, we can't have him that. All right, well, I'll make him this. No, we can't have that. It's like, put him in charge of City Watch. He makes the City Watch actually awesome. Corus Valerian's like, shouldn't the City Watch be feared? We're going to have a tournament. There's going to be all these people coming in. And so he makes the gold cloaks, which he's the reason they got the name.
Giuliani King's Landing.
Oh, yeah. It was brutal what he did, but like they were pointing out people crimes, like that guy, he sexually assaulted a woman. Oh, a wiener's cut off. There you go. This guy obviously stole, hand cut off. I don't think they really killed that many people. It was only a few. They did the duty point out for murder. Yeah, they cut that dude's head off. But he makes the gold cloaks because he wants them to stand out and be proud of themselves. They got their cool little gold sashes, and he's trying to do good. And he says that near the end. So you talked about where he told Viserys that he was weak. That wasn't an insult from him to his brother, like, you're weak and I should do it. He called him weak because he can see that the other High Lords are abusing their power and abusing him. He wanted to always be by his side.
It was more of an intervention than it was.
Yeah, I think he loves his brother.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, he wanted to be his hand of the king, to look after him. He's like, dude, Otto Hightower isn't going to protect you if someone tried to come in and harm you.
That's right. Genuine honor and love for his brother.
They're not looking after you. They're looking after their interests, and you kind of get that. Come back to Corus Valerian. Corus Valerian's like, hey, over in the steppes, there's pirates and stuff, and we need to kind of handle that because that's a problem, because the steppes is the main area that connects to Dorne. And, Dorne's a part of the kingdom. It's like, you kind of don't want to piss them off like that. And they're like, we'll let the pirates sort it out. Ha ha ha, the other High Lords. And then the king just kind of like agrees with that. And so they move on to the next task. And that's the kind of thing, and in the books, that Daemon goes and handles. He's like, I'll go get the steps in line. And that's why they call him in the books the Rogue Prince. He's the one to go out and do things. He doesn't want to be forced to do things for the realm. This is why he doesn't like his wife in the Eyrie.
I love that about him, too.
Yeah.
It has a little, again, Jaime Lannister feel, because he doesn't need to be a knight, but that's who he is.
Yeah. He is very brash and full of himself, because you saw he got owned by Sir Criston Cole in the tournament, which that does happen in the book, too. Gets unseated and then beaten actually in the fight on the ground. So that was fun too. And Criston Cole, he's very honorable, got a kind of Brienne sense to him, and didn't just smash his face like everyone else did, because every one of those other joust competitors dead. That's where most of our gore came from. That and the gold cloaks, rounding up the criminal scum. There's your Batman, actually, Daemon Targaryen, the Dark Knight with gold cloaks.
The Gold Knight of Westeros.
The Golden Knight.
Yeah, that was interesting too, of like covering this idea. So season 1, there was, I think it was the pilot, in fact, kind of the first meeting of the council, the King's Council. Ned Stark comes in, or maybe episode 2, whatever. And one of the first kind of reports among the council was basically, we have a crime problem. And they go through like the crime report of last night. And it was like, 2 holes got killed, and a baker was shot with an arrow, and there was some other problems with these people in Flea Bottom, whatever the crime report was. And I just thought that was interesting to like cover crime, because it's not just the city, it's essentially Washington DC. It's like, if the people outside the White House are like, if there's true chaos, like, it's gonna come in. So point is, King's Landing needs to be a safe place. To have a guy who's essentially, he's not a vigilante because he is the law, his brother is the king, but to kind of take, the idea of taking matters into your own hands, to me had a vigilante Batman feel to it. I thought that was badass.
He said he followed the laws to the exact, like we talked about. Thieves, he cut the hands off of. Sexual assaulters, he cut their wieners off. And murderers, he executed. So it's like, was he following the written laws? And that's what he did. He's like, all right, we're just going to handle this right away. I'll do exactly what the law says the punishment is, and we're going to get all the criminal scum out of here right now. And I think he takes his job very diligently, and the other High Lords don't like that. They're like, okay, so if he's doing this all right, how can we pay off the gold cloaks or kind of do whatever legal things we want to do? The kind of stuff that we see in Game of Thrones that goes on. You wouldn't be able to do that if Daemon's in charge of the gold cloaks.
Right, because it makes the whole Game of Thrones transparent.
Yeah.
The literal game of like, you know, you have your Varys, you have your Littlefinger. I don't know if I was telling you, but some of my favorite scenes of season 1 especially are Varys. No, I was telling my stepdad because he's a big Thrones fan. It was Varys and Baelish. They show up early because to the throne room, and just the symbolism of like these are the two guys who are actually running the city. So it's them alone in the throne room waiting for the king to show up for the king's council or whatever, and these are the two most powerful people essentially in the kingdom. Because they control information, they control the secrets, they are the Game of Thrones. Whereas it's like, if you have this guy, if you had a Daemon Targaryen, it's like, here, all transparent now. Like, there's no more room for Varys, there's no more room for Baelish, unless they're smart enough to get around a guy like that. Yeah, that's interesting. That's why, you know, even the politicians don't like Batman, because they're like, shit, like, this guy could find some dirt on me.
Yeah. And that was the thing, too, we saw. When Daemon's not at the council meetings, yet he was hiding in the shadows listening, they're all talking shit about him. But Viserys is constantly, like, standing up for him, which he said in the council. It's like, I'm the only one who stands up for you, which he knows. That's why his brother loves him. He doesn't talk shit about him behind his back. And he's like, yeah, I know that they don't like you, and I try to find a position for you to where everyone's happy. He's in the king's position. Everyone needs to be satisfied, and that's just not going to necessarily happen. And obviously Otto Hightower is making a play because he sent his daughter to go comfort the king.
Oh, that felt very Thrones too. I'm like, ooh, this show's going bold again.
Well, in the book, Alicent does marry the king.
Okay.
Which is probably going to happen here because we know she's cast as a different actress when they do the skip. And so the contention is not, oh no, Daemon's upset because they chose Rhaenyra, because Daemon has a similar relationship with Rhaenyra. He ends up like loving her. So I was like, yeah, they look up to each other quite often and root for one another. And they're not in contention to fight like for the heirship. Okay, so Viserys chose his daughter instead. Then Daemon's going to go off and do his own thing. That's what he does. He's like, I'm the rogue prince. I'll take my favorite little whore. I'm not going back to the Eyrie. I'll go somewhere else and cause some damage that needs to be done, the Targaryen justice, and that's where we'll be at. But what will cause a problem is
my favorite little whore. Like, he's got whore groupies. Meanwhile, his wife is in the Eyrie. It's so funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually thought
it's Sopranos Guma. That's what it is.
I thought Syraxes was gonna like turn on the whore and was like, yeah, put your hand right here, because that dragon is fierce. It doesn't like anyone. It's like it's already kind of like getting all pissy and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, just touch right here, you'll be okay. Oh, damn, I have to get a new whore. I wonder if I can get my wife from the Eyrie to pet my dragon.
Your mom to test, like when guys do that, they're like, if her and my mom don't get along, that's it. Yeah. In this case, it's like, you can't tame my dragon.
Syraxes like, smells like a whore. She's like, smells like dragon. It's like, oh, everything smells in this city.
Yeah, plus it's a medieval city, which, ask any history teacher, the smells of ancient cities are just...
That's why they had the powder. They had to put the powder in their nose to like not smell the shit that was everywhere.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is of Versailles. You have the Palace of Versailles, and just, I mean, opulence at its best, especially this is Victorian era. So it's like even way more modern than medieval. And it's just beautiful palace. You can tour it to this day right outside Paris. And right against those walls were no plumbing. There was no plumbing at Versailles. So you just knew it stank of absolute shit.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fascinating. Next episode of Smelling Like Shit. That'd be a fun segment. Identify the places in King's Landing.
By the smell.
Scene by scene of what the hell did that place smell like.
Like, I guess I'd rather take the dragon smell over the shit smell. Do dragons just smell like big giant iguanas? I don't know.
I couldn't stop thinking about that. I was like, I'm a little baked right now, but what does that giant reptile smell like?
I don't know.
I mean, snakes do have like a weird...
I feel like they're also always breathing fire just because the one dude's covered in like soot, and you'd imagine they would just do it just because. Yeah, well, maybe that's what he does. He brushes their teeth. It's like, oh, gotta clean out the dragon's throat. He's got a lot of soot in here. It's like, oh, dude. He's like, don't be scared. Just poke the toothpick at them. They'll calm the shit down.
Whoops, I gagged him. What's that thing that flaps in the back of your throat?
Oh,
whatever that
the
thing
uvula.
Is. Don't hit the uvula.
Oh man.
Hey. Oh.
They need to bust out into a musical number.
And I felt like
be like Mary Poppins.
Well, that's apparently gonna, be what's so great about the next Joker movie is that it's
you don't want the Harley Quinn J-pop musical. Hey, that's what J-pop would mean. Joker pop.
Oh God, we're not gonna be talking about that right now.
Will she do Poker Face as Joker Face?
Joker Face. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah, here's back to, I guess, details, spoiler stuff. That's another thing. I wanted some more. I think Thrones did this amazing thing of, small human moments. It was like a formula that they had. I know we're in this period of the golden age and I kind of like that they are doing their own thing in terms of tone, right? So we'll hit tone now of like tone of this versus Thrones of, yes, we're in this golden age. It's almost like a history book. It's going to be a little shinier, nicer and stuff. Thrones did this thing, though, of like, I feel like if those dragon tamers were on Thrones, there'd be like 10 minutes of those guys playing with the dragons, having... What I'm trying to say is like, you got the plumber's perspective. You got the medieval example of be like, Gendry was a character. He's just a guy who hammers out, the view of the common people is what I'm trying to say. I kind of wish, but again, I guess because this whole story is a focus on royalty, maybe that's...
It's a history book about the Targaryens.
Yeah, so you're not going to spend time with people in Flea Bottom.
No, not usually. It'll be characters that kind of rise to prominence, like Sir Christian Cole. They're like, he's a knight from, a non-too-prominent family, and he's getting a lot of show because he's kind of kicking everyone's ass in the tournament. And
he was the guy with the mace.
Yes,
mace, Morning Star.
Yeah, he had a Morning Star, and he had the ladybug shield. That's like, as we got Knight Ladybug is going to fight the dragon.
That's almost as badass as the Prince of Flowers.
Yeah, I did like when he beat the Baratheon guy though. Baratheon guy's like, I'd like the feather, even though I don't need it, of the queen that never was, and she's like, 10 years I've heard this shit. And then the look on her face when he gets unseated, she's like, bitch.
I gotta say, I mean, while we're on, spoilers and the jousting was cool. I found myself 25, 30 minutes into an episode of something called House of the Dragon, and it was like a 15-minute jousting scene. And it's like, cool. If there was that and you wanted to interlace some plot into it, like Thrones once again. We got that jousting scene, the low-rent jousting scene that we got with, birch trees as your setup. But it's still like, that's where we got the history of the Mountain and the Hound. Like, Baelish is whispering in Sansa's ear of, he melted his brother's face in the coals. You're getting exposition, and whereas this was like, I guess there were some, but it just seemed to kind of just be, and it was intercut with the 4 C-sections. Yes. So let's be, before you guys jump on me about that was really cool. But maybe, I guess, just jump right into that. Yeah. Instead of like, okay, 10 minutes of a guy who's supposed to be riding a dragon, not riding a dragon. Like, where was Daemon and his dragon? Yes, we got that at the end. Just maybe they could have pushed that up a little bit.
You also got super bloody, too, after the king left. Because the first few jousting scenes, no one battles to the death off the horse.
That annoyed me too. I'm like,
he leaves and it's like, all right, he's gone. Let's kill! Bloodfest 2022!
Yeah, like, I mean, in Thrones, you saw the freaking joust in the dude's neck, and like you see Sansa, like that was her first witness of death. And this got, I mean, even for Thrones, like the cameras, it's an extreme close-up of the dude's neck just gurgling blood.
Well, that mattered too for that scene because
mattered.
there was the
reason,
mystery about how did the squire get to become a full-fledged knight in full armor for no reason. And that was part of Ned's like mystery. And then seeing him just completely wrecked because he wasn't good enough to be a knight in the first place. So he got completely decimated in the jousting competition. And that was the mystery. It's like somebody paid this guy off because he's trash.
Wow. Right, that was part of it, yeah. You know, that's another thing. I felt like pretty much everything you saw in Thrones, even to a fault, like season 1, we were talking on the way over here, it's hands down my favorite part of the whole show. It's absolutely incredible. Especially I was saying before, first episodes are hard. I mean, for your first season, and first seasons are hard. First seasons are tough. Opening anything is tough. It was so good, but, you know, it's also not, like, nothing perfect. There were some scenes that there's a little too much, maybe, exposition through dialogue. I think I might have been saying this before of, like, Thrones, to me, had just the highest respect. It was like TV first, source material second. Of, we're going to give you this amazing George R. R. Martin dialogue, but it's like, it's going to be through a show as a presentation first, source material second. This feels a little more like a book with the voiceover, with all that. But, you know, you still have to do your exposition. Point is, I feel like there were more scenes than I remembered of season 1 where it's like, this is the story of this is the story of that. Again, for the millionth time, you have to do that work. But main point here is that I feel like every scene of Thrones was like deliberate. Like there wasn't a minute of that first season that maybe there was, but there's very little I would have kind of cut. Whereas I feel like even to the point of like, oh, the reason I saw that scene was set up for this and set up for that. You could argue that, you know, maybe that's some of the things that we got here. We don't know what is set up because we haven't seen what is potentially being set up. I just feel like some air could have been taken out of this, especially because it's 16 minutes. It was an hour and 16.
Yeah. There was a lot of on-the-nose moments.
Let's hit those, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, they literally said the title of the series. They're like, they
me.
used to call it A Song of Ice and Fire. So that was the point I was talking about in the non-spoiler section.
Here's the book written by George R. R.
Well, they're suggesting now that Aegon knew all along. Aegon the Conqueror is like, I conquered Westeros because I knew that something was going to come from the north, a winds of winter.
Yeah, was that in the book?
I don't really recall it being like that.
So hand-fisted, dude.
When I went to reread Fire and Blood, I focused primarily on where this season's going to be at, but not that I remember. And
they call it A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, it was just a thing about hinting that he was having visions that the White Walkers were coming in. Without a Targaryen on the throne, the world would be doomed. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little on the nose. And then, yeah, he literally says, like, it's like the Winds of Winter. The book that's not released, that's literally the title, Winds of Winter. And serious? In the throne room, he goes, you guys are going to feast on me like crows. Like the 4th book, A Feast of Crows. Yeah, and I was like, ooh, how many book towels are we going to get? I always get that Family Guy moment. He said the name of the movie. It's a Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for the end of the episode to be with Daemon riding away going, let it end with fire and blood. So I'm like, dude, he hands her the Valyrian steel dagger that we saw in Thrones of him saying, he might as well have just been saying, previously on Game of Thrones. It's like, dude.
I also noticed Viserys did have the dagger.
Yeah, that was the dagger. That was Arya's. That was given for no reason to a cripple. Yeah, God, that was so bad. Ooh. And that's the dagger she uses to drop stab the Night King, who has no security for.
Which who knows if that's even going to happen either.
God.
I don't know.
What do you mean?
In the books, we don't know if that's how it's going to go down or not.
Oh yeah, God. Yeah, I just watched. I'm not done with season 8 yet. That's the final season, and good lordy lord, I watched the Battle of Winterfell the other night. Better than I remembered it. Not as dark as I remember it, but funny story. Quick tangent here. This should be a segment as well. Ripping on season 8. I think that's totally fair game. It was so bad. Let's just have a segment. Get it out of the way now. we're going to rip on season 8 whenever we want. No, we'll keep it under control. But it's just like, dude, I don't even know where I was going. What was I even talking about?
Respawning Dothraki. Yeah.
God, I don't even remember where I was going with it. Oh, so how I started to watch that episode to recap for this, the Battle of Winterfell, notoriously darkly lit. I tried watching it in my car on my phone, and it's a bright day. We live in Florida, but I literally could not see the screen. So I'm like, yeah, maybe it is as dark. Point is, when I was trying to watch it on my iPad, I was like, it's not as dark. It's still pretty dark. Yeah.
Is that a dragon? No, that's a smudge. We're not at the dragon part yet.
That's the DP smudging the lens. Another thing, quick kind of return to our intro episode. It might have sounded like I was correcting my Hand of the King. I wasn't. When you were talking about like some IMDb trivia here, Miguel Sapochnik is a co-showrunner to Ryan Condal. It sounded a little bit when I was rewatching the episode like I was saying, no, it wasn't. Let me prove you wrong on IMDb. I was just more looking at IMDb to find the exact credits, which is Ryan Condal's and I heard a podcast describe it well. Miguel Sapochnik is the directing arm of the showrunners, and then the writing arm, the lore of kind of George R. R. Martin, is this guy Ryan Condal. So Ryan Condal, writer, Miguel Sapochnik, director. But they are both co-show running the show. What's weird about that term show running is that it's not like, that's not a title you get on IMDb. It just says executive producer, blah, blah, blah. But these are the people running the show. He controls how the show looks. He controls so much of it, the tone, and directing, especially with Thrones. I mean, it's such a, again, dialogue-heavy film, kind of film TV first property. I mean, obviously it's a book first, but you know what I'm saying. So back to this, Miguel Sapochnik directed Battle of Winterfell, directed Hardhome, some of the best, in terms of action, battles, some of the best of Thrones.
Oh, and Hardhome, like, by the way, Hardhome is not in the books. It's only mentioned that the Night Watch fights the Whites, but that's Game of Thrones only, and it was pretty epic. We were talking about that in the car. I still love the scene where Jon Snow grabs his long claw, and it clings up against the White Walker spear, and the look of terror in the White Walker's face, like, oh shit. It's like, oh shit indeed, boy. You're about to die.
Yeah, we were talking about in the intro, like, my old routine used to be pick up barbecue, a rib in my mouth, like, watch Thrones with barbecue, and I'd just be like, but yeah, I was standing there with a rib in my mouth as Jon Snow shatters the White Walker with Valyria, because none of us knew, like, how are we going to kill these things? That was the first time the whole world was like, oh, there's a chance. Like, that equaled hope. And I was just like, oh my God, this is television at its best. You know, I guess back to House of the Dragon. That was that one review, which I tried to avoid, but it's perfectly concise. This is, and we'll start to wrap up here with this, is like, final thoughts. It is really hard to recommend because I'm not going to recommend against it. Definitely check it out if you're a fan of Thrones. I think that I can recommend. If you're a fan of Thrones, jump right in.
Oh, yeah.
I just can't quite say yet. Because the biggest thing for me with Thrones, I think that I was a good audience for this, to toot my own horn, but it's literally like, I'm not a swords and magic guy. I don't think we said this yet in the intro episode, but I'm not really much of a swords and magic guy. I don't think I ever even finished a Harry Potter movie. I didn't even finish the Lord of the Rings movies. I think the books are great. For me, dragons, swords, magic, meh. But Thrones, the genius of it, I'm the millionth person to say this, is, again, you grounded it in human stories that made that whole world very tangible, very believable, and then sex and violence will bring you in too.
Political intrigue.
That'll bring you in, yes. And then the political intrigue, it had even the pitch of it, when D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, the showrunners of OG Thrones, when they pitched it to HBO, it was Sopranos set in Middle-earth. Because it's like that palace intrigue, the political intrigue, is what Sopranos is. It's about power. It's a gangster, but it's about power. You got your king, you got his knights, you have people vying for that power. Even medieval structures, if you look at them, very similar to the mafia. I had one of my art history teachers said that. He's like, if you know your gangster history, it's like you got your boss, which is obviously your king, Tony Soprano. You have an underboss, hand of the king, Stephen. Consigliere, and then you have your capos, which are your main, like, either your council or your heads of each kingdom. And then you have your knights, and these are your soldiers. These are your hitmen. It's all the same shit. So Thrones was just like immediately sucked me in. This, I think, I'm glad that Thrones has already done the work for especially viewers like me, viewers like you, viewers like me who, if you're not a swords and magic person, Thrones brought you in. I don't know. Like, it's so hard to remove yourself from Thrones, but what do you think if you had never watched Thrones jumping into this?
I don't know if this one grabs you right away.
That's a good way to put it, grabs you, yeah.
Yeah, because everything seems fine. It's not like Daemon flew off and is like, I'll be back with a vengeance. Instead, he's like, all right, got my favorite hoe, let's go. Dragon's like, yeah, here we go. Play the Space Jam music. Come on and slam. That's just how it ended. And everyone's like, yeah, we pledged fealty to the princess. And peace was in the world. This is like...
versus a child getting thrown out of a window after a reveal of incest.
Oh, yeah.
Within 5 minutes. You're like, what?
Yeah, incest with the queen, too. Ooh, spicy.
Yeah, like knight, hand of the queen, twin sister, a kid goes out a window. It doesn't... here's the other thing, too, I think, though, that's interesting to kind of go against... To kind of think out loud here of... Maybe they're doing that to just be like, oh, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Golden Age of Westeros, everything's fine. And then the real trick of this show is going to be like, no, it's not, bitch. And we know a civil war is coming.
Oh, yeah.
Into that. So maybe like episode 3, it's just going to be like, you had all that fun and enjoyed yourself, and there was a joust, and it was pleasant. Medieval times, or Ren Fair, all that stuff. Have fun, and then it's just all gonna wear itself down.
I imagine it will be
burn it, essentially, literally.
I imagine it'll probably be, depending on when the 10-year skip episode is. It might be episode 4 or 5.
Yeah. So as we close out, let's talk about that because we haven't really covered that today. The 10-year time jump. Yeah.
Yeah. Because right now everything's all fine. This is build up the characters and their motivations early, but like the Civil War, that's not going to happen until a little bit later. Obviously, 10 years. And you got to build the motivation because the whole reason for why it's going to happen hasn't happened yet, but the seeds have been sprinkled. And it's kind of hard. You couldn't use this episode to sprinkle like more than just that because we're with the characters while they're younger. And I understand why they're doing that. They really want you to kind of understand where everyone's at character-wise, especially when Daemon's out roaming around doing whatever he does anyhow. So it'll probably be 4 or 5 is my guess. I think 5 will be like the big spike and you're like, oh dear God. And then you'll be like, there's so many dragon deaths happening right now. Fire everywhere and blood.
Hey. All right. So while we're there, let's do predictions now. Let's do predictions for, let's say, episode 2.
Episode 2.
What do you want to see? What do you think we'll get? Because that can be two very different things. What you want to see and what you think we'll actually get.
I mean, what I would want to see is that we just go right into the time skip. That'd be
Same.
Perfect.
Yeah, that'd be
just
good.
Go, okay, and everyone rejoice. 10 years later, things are not very rejoiced enough. Now, I think what is going to happen is we're going to see stuff that's happening off into the side. So we should see Daemon out being the rogue prince. Obviously, he's going to go handle the problems in the steppes. We should see...
That's right, we're going to get all that...
They really need to show the blossoming of Princess Rhaenyra with Alicent because they're like best bros. And Alicent then...
Hightower.
Yeah, and then Alicent has also got to kind of start weaseling her way into the king's heart. And then, bam, time skip. We see the event that's going to cause the Civil War... and the tensions rise, and that would be excellent. But I don't know how long the stretch is going to be. But if going by their trend, if 2 is we see dragons lay waste to pirates, oh boy, are we on the right track.
Thank you. I mean, that to me is like open episode 2 just melting.
Yeah.
Where are they going, Dorne?
It's the steppes. It's the area that leads to Dorne, and there's pirates all over the damn place.
Yeah, I want Raiders of the Lost Ark face melting of the Dornish. Yeah. Like, just jump in, dude. And I'm not saying the whole show needs to be like that. What I'm talking about, we were talking about on the car ride over. A lot of Thrones, due to budgetary reasons, was people talking in rooms. But it's just, again, for the millionth time, how they cut it. You opened with basically a horror movie on ice. Like, it was unbelievably sick even with the whole dire wolf thing, which was early on in that pilot.
Yeah.
That had a horror feel to it because it was like a stag had killed this dire wolf, and the dire wolf sort of
was huge.
gigantic. And traditionally these things are north of the wall. So it's like this threat is coming. Winter is coming. It's coming. And it's presented through really sick, tonally horror, moments. I'm hoping that this is just like dragon horror, and it's just more dragons.
Oh, we'll get them. We'll get them.
Yeah.
I think the best thing is going to be when we do the season 1 recap. Then we can really recommend or not recommend and have hopes for season 2. But it should be interesting. I'm expecting like a nice shallow pace, and then we're going to get this huge, and then it's going to be blood and fire all the way through.
It is cold fire. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it should feel the way Thrones feels, where it's like out of nowhere, people are just getting burned and there's blood, and it's like, I'm walking down the street and just arrow through a head, fire. I would really like that. And I think there was not enough kind of shock violence in this. Because the thing, again, I might have been because of that tone pitch of like, this is Sopranos set in Middle Earth. In Sopranos, a lot of the kills are not like, all right, how are we going to take this guy out? Like, let's plan it like a heist movie. It's from the person who's getting killed point of view. The guy's driving in his car to work, and out of nowhere, he just gets shot in the head. Like, like Game of Thrones. Driving your dragon to work, out of nowhere, gets shot. 360 no scope by a scorpion bolt thrower. You're on Greyjoy, piece of shit. I literally saw that. Was it this morning or last night? I was laughing. I was like, oh, Steven. But even that, like, even for a very dumb conceptually idea that you could somehow get a dragon 360 no scope off a boat, that was cool the way it happened. Was just she's just flying, and all of a sudden her child gets killed right next to her. Maybe this will be different tonally. I don't know.
Maybe.
What do you think?
More violence, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, we did kill a child in the first episode. Game of Thrones did not. They only pushed one out a window.
We only crippled.
We only crippled one. Broke his little legs.
We only turned him into the 3-eyed raven.
I can't feel my toes. No one can ever really feel their toes.
Some positives of this is like, at least there is zero setup for that 3-eyed. Well, actually, no, because he said like, the Song of Ice and Fire is about to be played by my contrived dialogue. So, God, if we get 3-eyed ravens in this, no. Please.
I don't know if we're gonna get that. They should be focusing.
No reason for that.
There isn't. They should be focusing heavily on the Targaryens, the Valerians, and just how the other lords of Westeros are gonna side with each of the warring families. And what?
Valyria is gonna be at its height right now, right?
Yeah.
So the Doom happened.
Yes, this is Valerian. They're related to the Targaryens. Corus Valerian, he's the shipmaster on the council.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that's like their navy?
Yes, and they're another family. He's married to Princess Rhaenys, the queen that never was.
Okay.
They should be on Dragonstone. So that's another thing too. Like, I hope we actually get a shift and we see what's happening on Dragonstone. Yes. What's her views on stuff? Then Daemon running around lighting things on fire, killing pirates, sea smoke in action, because they have a lot of dragons too. This will be fun. And I want to see the inside of the dragon pit. See all the dragons getting poked with toothpicks. You're a bad dragon. Psst.
Yeah, they have their, what is it, the dog whisperer? That guy's like...
Oh, Caesar Romano. What you got to do is you got to poke the dragon and let the dragon know his place.
You think we're going to get baby dragons?
We should.
Oh.
We should, definitely. They used to keep the eggs in the cribs.
That's right.
At least when we get the 10-year time skip, or at least like right before when the other children are born, you should see some other dragon eggs.
And it'll have that, I forget the name of the movie. I think Boyhood it's called. You know about that movie with...
The The one they took like 10 or 12 years to make or whatever.
Yeah, it's a real time.
Yeah.
Same actors, everything. It took, I think, 12 years in between shooting it, but it's cut together as one movie. And it's Richard Linklater, the guy who does all like the Before Midnight, those Ethan Hawke movies, a lot of indie stuff. He's most famous for Slacker back in the 90s, very influential on Kevin Smith. But there's a literal, like, he took to and let everyone age in real time, all that shit, which is, I think they come back 3 times, actually. Whatever it is. This, maybe we'll get some of that of like, oh, you see a baby dragon, and then time jump, and that bitch is not a baby anymore.
Right now, that's definitely going to be Rhaenyra's dragon, because Syrax is only big enough now to ride, and you can see that it's a lot smaller, and so we should see it as it progresses.
Oh, I didn't put together that dragon's small.
Yeah.
Right, because the neck on, what's his name's?
Oh, much longer.
Shit.
Yep. And
I love how they're all very different. You were talking last episode, very distinct, the dragons.
Oh, yeah, like even on Syrax, he had like totally different horn structures on him. His face was a lot different. And of course, the colors. The colors, they went all out. They're like, I want them distinct. George R. R. Martin's like, make them look like they are in the books. Vibrant. You got it.
And at least she knows what to hold on to.
Yeah, the saddle.
Good God. Whatever you can. So stupid. Wow, that season. Back to season 8 rips as we close. Yeah, man, no, I'm excited. Here's the other thing, too. I think I might have said this before of, you could argue that we got 8 seasons of a pilot already. Like, you could just say that, meaning, like, if this was dropped, if this pilot of HOD, House of the Dragon, was dropped in the middle of Thrones, you might not necessarily be like, that was slow, but because you had all this set up and then you're going to get a conclusion. So maybe they are just kind of banking on like, look, you already got 8 seasons, now we're going to do something a little different, give you a little history of this shit, and then we'll jump into the action.
Yeah, that would be good.
I guess what I'm just saying, though, is I'm still a little surprised that with how hated that ending was, they didn't just kind of jump in balls deep with the dragons.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a chance that this show could make up for and save Game of Thrones as a whole.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, for a minute. If they introduce some concepts that are from the books that Game of Thrones ignored, which are the Blackfires, then we know that there's that Jon Snow show coming out, which should be set after. You could still introduce those characters as like threats to the realm, is the Blackfires, because they're related to the Targaryens, and they could be coming back to take the throne. And Westeros isn't in the best condition right now, because they've been fighting wars the whole series. King's Landing is in ruins.
You mean by Game of Thrones?
By Game of Thrones, yeah, they're in ruins. So like, if another
what did they call it? Post-decadence? I forgot the word, but they said it was a perfect term.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Because that's what affords us that lived-in, tangible universe, is that you're almost in the ruins of what we're seeing now.
So it would be interesting, because in the books you have a character called Young Griff, and he's a big part of the books, and he was apparently someone rescued by Varys and sent off. And Tyrion meets him, and Tyrion's starting to question, like, he's not just a fisherman's kid. He's too well educated. He knows about the world. He's good at a lot of things, and he eventually finds out who he is, but we, the audience, don't. It's being led to believe that he's Aegon Targaryen. He's actually related to the Targaryens, and that Varys snuck him out before he got killed. But there's also a chance that he's actually a Blackfire instead, and that they're trying to get a Blackfire on the throne to set up an opponent for Daenerys in the books. Because in the books, you got to have Daenerys have to really choose between the throne that she shouldn't really want, or to go fight the White Walkers and save Westeros for your actual Song of Ice and Fire. And that's like the big Daenerys thing. And I really hope that he ends up being a Blackfire, and if Game of Thrones, if the series decides to kind of introduce them and play with that, and then you have Jon Snow revisit that for his series, you can have them be a big thing, and it could be really cool at the end.
Wow. So I guess while we're there, we'll cover this for like 2 minutes and then have a real quick thing, and then we got to get out of here for the literal comic shop, which we should have mentioned. We are recording this live from Davincis Dreamworks here in sunny Jensen Beach, Florida.
Yeah.
Live from the Dragon Pit, where people are going to be getting maimed, burned, and melted.
No, I got my toothpick. They know their place.
It's like a monster. We should do that. That'd be funny, like monster truck rally ads, but for dragons.
Like I said, here in Cyrax, I only think of Mortal Kombat. Cyrax wins.
Cyrax win.
But it's Cyrax with an S, not a C.
But yeah, so as we come up to the end here, two things. One, which we were just covered, so we'll finish. I want to finish that point of it is now a franchise. Like,
yeah,
Game of Thrones is now a franchise. Once you get two of a thing, you know, obviously we had the books, so you could have argued it was a franchise before that, but truly pop culturally now, I mean, it's open to the same level of criticism as you would with a Marvel movie, with Star Wars, with even weirdly, Sopranos is now with that prequel show. That is a franchise. So it's going to be really fascinating, I think, and I've already covered a lot of the criticisms I have of just maybe traps that you're setting for yourself and extra pressure now that this thing is a franchise. But also, you know, on the positive, like you're saying, you could save a real shitty ending. And basically that would just be the middle kind of crappy part of a sandwich.
Yeah.
All right, so the final thing is just a real quick anecdote of Targaryen history and the Red Keep and stuff. The Red Keep is where the royal family lives in King's Landing. And as it was being built by the Targaryens, there was a conqueror named Maegor the Cruel, was his name?
Yep, that's one of the Targaryens.
So the scene when Tyrion Lannister kills his father, and before that, though, Jaime Lannister, you know, frees him not knowing he's about to kill their father, and he's running through all these secret passageways. Those secret passageways were, in history, and correct me anytime, built by Maegor the Cruel. There's no point in going into why he's named that. He's a real cruel piece of shit. One of the things he did, though, that I thought was so gangster, speaking of Sopranos and speaking of Thrones, the dude has these, you know, royal construction workers build these secret passages and then has a big party for them and kills them all. He red weddings his whole construction crew.
It's so no one knows.
Don't let out the secrets of the secret passages. That is the most gangster shit. There is literally a scene in The Sopranos, or a whole thing in The Sopranos, where his underling, Christopher, one of his soldiers, is supposed to hire these guys, and, you know, obviously you have the racial point in Sopranos of, like, just hire some black guys from Irvington. And Irvington was a terrible area right outside Newark. Represent, my mom grew up there. But it's like, Irvington's just awful area. Yeah, hire some black guys. And what they do after they put a hit out on this guy, and then they cancel the hit. And it's the hit of, if you know your Sopranos, Carmine, Lou Pertazzi. They cancel the hit, and so that it doesn't get out that they were about to hit a boss, he just has the dudes killed. So he like hires two hitmen, and then just kills the two hitmen after, you know, the non-hit. And it's just like, this guy, I just thought that story was so badass.
Oh, yeah.
So the point of that is to say, as we wrap up, this is who we're dealing with, you know, this Targaryen family. Now, obviously, Viserys isn't Maegor the Cruel, but that is just such cool history.
Yeah, they have a lot of pretty badass Targaryens. Daemon is definitely one of them, but probably my favorite from that story is Aemon the One-Eye, and we've seen him in the trailer. He's a pretty good actor, and he should be pretty awesome in the show.
Aemon, okay.
Yeah, Aemon One-Eye.
Nice. All right, so Steven's got to open the store here. We are closing out for yet another episode of HOD Pod, a House of the Dragon podcast. Once again, subscribe here on the YouTube channel. For now, it's going to be youtube.com/above and Batman Beyond. If you want to find us on Instagram, I haven't set up social media yet, but just for now, follow me at Batman Beyond Media. You can follow the comic shop at Davincis Dreamworks too. Come to Davincis Dreamworks here in sunny Jensen Beach, Florida. Any cool dragon-related things going on right now?
Not currently, but the guys that have been playing more Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game, which is more closely based off the books, so that's been fun.
Awesome. So yeah, stop in for that. Check us out online. And then obviously on audio, subscribe to the audio feed as well. New episodes are going to be dropping every Tuesday. To follow the Once again, here on YouTube, we're going to be streaming every Monday, 11 a.m. EST, and then subscribe to audio, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Are you ready for our send-off? Do you remember our send-off? I think you'll get it. I'll pass it off to you. I think you'll pick it up. All right, so I've been Benjamin.
And this is Steven.
Thank you for joining us and entering
House of the Dragon.